You have had your dragon for months, maybe longer. You handle it regularly. You feed it by hand sometimes. You have learned its schedule, its preferences, the specific way it positions itself under the basking lamp in the late morning, the particular stillness it settles into after a long handling session. You feel, in a way that is hard to articulate but easy to feel, that the two of you have built something, that the animal knows you, that there is something happening between you that is more than a human managing a reptile in a box. But then you read something, an article, a forum thread, a video that tells you bearded dragons do not bond, that they do not feel affection, that the moments you have been reading as connection are tonic immobility, stress suppression, habituation to a stimulus they cannot escape. And something in you deflates because it sounds authoritative and it sounds like it might be right. And if it is right, then every moment you thought meant something different than you thought. Here is what that framing gets wrong. It sets up a false choice between mammalian emotional bonding and no relationship at all. It ignores the middle ground where most of the reality actually lives. Bearded dragons do not bond the way a dog bonds. They do not experience the neurochemistry of attachment that social mammals evolved over millions of years of group living. But they learn, they habituate, they develop individualized responses to specific people that are different from their responses to strangers. They show, through behavior that is involuntary and therefore honest, that certain presences have moved from the threat category into something else, something that does not have a clean mammalian name, but that is real, measurable, and worth understanding correctly. The signs of that shift are not the ones most owners look for. They are quieter than a wave and subtler than eye contact, and most owners spend years with their animals without knowing what they are actually looking at when they see them. Welcome to Reptile Realities. Subscribe before you keep watching, because this channel is about reading your animal accurately, and what you are about to learn will change the way you observe your dragon every single day. Stay through all 7, because the last one is the sign most owners never recognize at all, and it is the one that tells you the most. Number 1, the body stays loose when you pick it up. This is the foundational sign, and the one to establish before any of the others mean anything, because it is the baseline from which everything else is measured. When a bearded dragon that does not trust the person picking it up is lifted from its enclosure, the body does something specific and involuntary. It tenses. Not dramatically, not in a way that looks like struggle necessarily, but in a way you can feel in your hands if you know what to compare it to. The muscles engage, the limbs pull slightly inward or stiffen outward, depending on the individual animal. The tail may rigidify. The overall weight of the animal in your hands feels concentrated at the contact points rather than distributed across your palm, because a tense body holds itself rather than resting against the surface beneath it. A dragon that has genuinely habituated to you, that has accumulated enough positive or neutral handling experiences to move your presence out of the active threat category, feels different in your hands from the moment of pickup. The body is heavy in a way that loose things are heavy. The limbs find a natural position rather than a defensive one. The tail curves or hangs rather than holding rigid. The weight settles into your palm as if the animal has decided to let gravity do its job rather than working against it. You will not notice this until you have something to compare it to. Handle someone else's dragon or handle your own dragon during a period when something has stressed it, and you will feel immediately what tension in a held bearded dragon actually is. Then go back to your own animal in a calm, well-managed session and feel what the absence of that tension is. The difference is the sign. The loose body is the dragon's autonomic nervous system telling you, without any possibility of performance or deception, that the threat response has not activated at your touch. Number 2, it chooses to stay on you when it could leave. This one requires a specific test to read correctly, and most owners never run it deliberately because they do not realize it is a test. Put your dragon on a flat, open surface with you sitting nearby. Not the enclosure, not a restricted space. An open surface, a bed, a couch, a table, somewhere the animal has room to move away from you if it wants to. Then do not restrain it, do not redirect it when it moves. Simply be present and let the animal make its own choices about proximity. A dragon that has not developed a trust relationship with you will move away from you. consistently, not frantically but steadily, using whatever space is available to increase the distance between itself and the large mammal that represents an unresolved threat in its assessment. It is not being unfriendly. It is doing exactly what its biology tells it to do when a threat is present and escape is possible. A dragon that has moved your presence into a genuinely different category does something different. It may move around the surface, exploring, investigating the edges, but it returns. Not every time, not with the consistency of a trained behavior, but with a frequency that exceeds what chance or random movement would produce. It comes back toward you. It may settle against your leg or your hand, or simply stop moving when it reaches your vicinity, choosing proximity over the available distance. That choice, made freely in an open space, is the clearest behavioral evidence available that your presence has become associated with something other than threat. The animal is not trapped with you. It is choosing you in the only way a bearded dragon chooses anything, through the movement of its body toward or away from a stimulus. Number 3, the eyes close during handling in the right way. We have covered eye closure in depth in a previous video, and if you have watched it, you know that closed eyes during handling is not automatically a sign of trust and is sometimes a sign of the opposite. But there is a specific quality of eye closure that is different from stress-induced tonic immobility, and learning to read the difference is one of the most valuable observational skills you can develop as a keeper. Tonic immobility eye closure is accompanied by a body that is still but rigid underneath the stillness. The tension is there if you look for it. The eye closure comes quickly, often within the first 30 seconds of being picked up, before the animal has had any time to settle. The breathing is faster than baseline. The animal does not respond to gentle environmental stimulation, a soft sound, a slight change in your hand position, with the alert curiosity of a comfortable animal. It stays locked in the closed-eye stillness, because the locked-in stillness is the point. Genuine relaxation eye closure looks and feels different. It comes later in a handling session, after the animal has been alert, after it has looked around, after it has shown you with its open, tracking eyes that it is present and assessing and not threatened. Then gradually, the eyes close. The body beneath the closure is loose in the way described in sign 1. The breathing is slow and visible along the sides. If you shift your hand gently, the animal adjusts fluidly rather than snapping back to a rigid position. If a sound occurs in the room, the eyes may open briefly, track the source with calm attention, and close again. The animal is not suppressed, it is resting. The distinction is real, and the body tells you which one you are in if you know how to read it. Number 4, it eats from your hand without hesitation. Feeding response is one of the most sensitive behavioral indicators of an animal's threat assessment of its immediate environment, and it is one that owners often overlook precisely because it seems so mundane. Of course, the dragon eats from my hand. It eats from everyone's hand. Food is food. But watch the feeding response carefully, and watch it in comparison. A dragon that is in a moderate state of stress or threat arousal will often refuse food entirely, or take it with a hesitation, a slight pulling back before striking, a realiness in the approach that is different from the clean, direct lunge of a fully comfortable animal. The feeding response in reptiles is closely tied to the overall activation state of the nervous system. A nervous system running a threat response and a nervous system running a normal feeding response are in some tension with each other. High threat arousal suppresses feeding motivation in prey animals for whom eating in a dangerous moment is a dangerous choice. A dragon that lunges for food from your fingers without any hesitation, without scanning the environment first, without the preliminary weariness of an animal that is not fully settled, is a dragon whose nervous system has assessed your presence and found it compatible with the feeding state. That compatibility is not nothing. It means the threat circuits are quiet. Quiet threat circuits in the presence of a large mammal handling the animal is exactly what trust, translated into reptile neurobiology, actually looks like. Number 5, it seeks your warmth deliberately. Bearded dragons thermoregulate constantly. Every positional choice the animal makes, every surface it selects, every orientation it adopts relative to its heat source is in part a thermal decision. The animal's nervous system is always tracking body temperature and always making adjustments. This makes thermal preference behavior one of the most honest behavioral channels available because it is driven by genuine physiological need rather than social signaling. Human skin temperature, typically between 91 and 96 degrees Fahrenheit at the surface, falls within the range that a bearded dragon's thermoregulatory system registers as a useful heat source. Not the primary source, not a replacement for proper basking temperatures, but a real thermal resource that the body notices. A dragon placed on your chest or your forearm and left free to reposition itself is making thermal choices alongside social ones. When a dragon that has been given free movement on an open surface repeatedly positions itself on your body specifically, returns to your arm or chest after exploring away from it, orients its ventral surface flat against your skin to maximize thermal contact, it is making a choice that has a thermal component and a social component simultaneously. The thermal component explains why the body is warm. It does not explain why this warm surface rather than another one. The social component is what makes your specific body the chosen thermal resource rather than a warm blanket or the basking rock. Both are present. The deliberate return to you specifically, when other warm options exist, is the part that tells you something about the relationship. Number 6. The defensive display disappears with you specifically. This sign requires you to observe your dragon across different contexts and different handlers, and what you are looking for is a discrepancy, a specific absence in your presence that is a presence in others. The beard darkening, the lateral body flattening, the open mouth display, the hissing, these are components of the threat and defensive display that a bearded dragon produces when its assessment of a situation exceeds a certain threshold. In a dragon that has not habituated to a particular person, handling by that person will sometimes produce components of this display, not always dramatically, not always obviously, but present in the slightly darkened beard, the mildly stiffened posture, the body that is just slightly more compressed than a fully comfortable animal. A dragon that has genuinely shifted its assessment of you will produce these displays with other people, with unfamiliar situations, with novel stimuli, and not produce them with you. The threshold for defensive display activation is higher in your presence, specifically, than in the presence of others. This is individualized habituation. The animal's nervous system has logged enough interactions with your particular scent, your particular movement patterns, your particular handling style, to categorize you differently from the generalized category of large, unfamiliar mammal. You have become a known quantity. Known quantities do not trigger the same defensive threshold that unknowns do. The absence of the display with you, present with others, is the evidence of that individual categorization. It is as close to being recognized as a bearded dragon is capable of producing. Number 7. It falls asleep on you in an open environment. This is the sign most owners never recognize because they do not understand what sleep requires from a prey animal's nervous system, and therefore do not understand what it means when a prey animal sleeps in their presence in an unenclosed space. Sleep is neurologically expensive for prey animals in a way it is not for apex predators. A sleeping animal is a vulnerable animal. The motor systems that drive escape behavior are offline or reduced. The threat monitoring that runs continuously during waking hours is diminished. For an animal whose survival has historically depended on being able to detect and respond to predators faster than the predators can close the distance, sleep represents a calculated risk taken only when the environmental assessment produces a low enough threat reading to make the vulnerability acceptable. We discussed in a previous video the unihemispheric sleep that many birds use to monitor while resting. Bearded dragons do not have this capacity to the same degree. When a bearded dragon sleeps, it sleeps with both eyes closed and with a genuine reduction in environmental monitoring. It is, during those moments, more vulnerable than at any other time. When your dragon falls asleep on your body, not in its enclosure where sleep is expected and the walls provide physical security, but on your chest or your arm in an open room, the animal's nervous system has produced a threat assessment low enough to permit genuine sleep in an unenclosed space in the presence of a large mammal. That assessment is not cognitive. It is not a decision the dragon makes by weighing options. It is the output of a nervous system that has processed the available information, including everything it has learned about you across every interaction you have had, and produced a reading that says the threat level here is low enough. Rest is possible. That reading, produced by biology that cannot lie, compiled from data that the animal has been collecting since the day you brought it home, expressed in the most vulnerable state the animal can be in, is the closest thing to trust that a bearded dragon's nervous system is built to produce. It does not look like a dog curling up with its owner. It does not come with the warmth of mammalian bonding chemistry. It is quieter than that and stranger than that, and in some ways more remarkable than that, because it was not given easily. It was earned, one interaction at a time, by an animal running ancient software on a nervous system built for a world without you, slowly updating its model of what you are, until the update produced something it had never produced for any large mammal in the history of its species. Something that permitted sleep. You have been working toward that without knowing it was the goal. Now you know what it looks like when you get there. Tell me in the comments which of these 7 signs you have seen in your dragon and which ones surprised you. Tell me how long you have had your animal and what the relationship looks like now versus when you first brought it home. I read every single one. See you in the next video.